Hello and welcome to Stretford Paddock. This is the preview for Manchester United against Southampton in the Premier League. I'm joined by Jay. How you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm good.
And we're joined down the line by one Adam McCullough. Adam, do you read me?
I do. Over.
Good. Over. Right. We're going to be looking at the pre-match press conference that Ole has had today. We're going to be looking a little bit at the Aston Villa game, a little bit at some team news, a few little things to look forward to for this game. But let's start with some of the stuff that Ole's been talking about. He mentioned Mason Greenwood in the press conference today, and he was talking about how these young players, they don't necessarily see the stress, they don't see the nerves that older players do. Adam, do you think that's true, or do you just think that's like a bit of almost like a cliche at this point to say that just because you're 18, that means that you don't get nervous before a match?
I still think he has nerves, but I think he does show kind of like a fearlessness towards playing. And I think you do see that from a lot of younger players. They're not scarred by any criticism from their peers or the public or their manager or anything like that. And they just go out there and play with a little bit of freedom. And I do think we've seen that from Mason Greenwood, but I also think that overlooks just a little bit how good Mason Greenwood is, because I don't think he plays like a teenager. I don't think he plays like a kid. I don't think his finishing is that of an 18-year-old. I think he's obviously showing a fearlessness that you'd expect of a younger player, but his actual ability, I don't think we've seen many players with that kind of quality in front of goal, in and around goal at all. And look, he could have a quiet season next season, and you can't blame him because he's obviously a young talent that's breaking through, and he's going to have times in his career where he'll have little dips. But you just look at him and you just think he's going to be the man for the next couple of years, and more. You don't really get. I've kept talking about Wayne Rooney recently, and I haven't seen a player like that since Wayne Rooney. I'm not comparing them either. I just think since in terms of just how ready they look for men's football. And even then, when Wayne Rooney come through, there was still bits where you look at and you think, oh, we need to learn how to pass in right areas. And I think Mason Greenwood's he's looking the part. He's looking the part, and it helps that he hasn't got the pressure and the focus that Wayne Rooney probably had on him when he broke through. All the focus is on Pogba and Bruno and Rashford and Martial, but we'll talk about it probably a little bit later. You've seen how Greenwood scoring goals was actually seen maybe a change in the way Rashford's playing as well. So he's brought the better out of other players, and he just looks ready-made. And like Ali says, you can't drop him.
Yeah, you can't drop him. And obviously these goals that he's been scoring. The thing that's amazing for me is, do you know most strikers, when they're sort of that key areas, anywhere up to sort of 10, 12 yards out, where you think anything in there you expect him to score. Mason's area where you expect him to score is like 20 yards out, because he doesn't just take shots. You see Fred, we've had a go at Fred in the past for taking shots from the edge of the box, doing whatever. He just passes it in from 20 yards, just a lot of power, obviously, but he's not swinging and hoping. His finishing extends ridiculously far to say how old he is, and just as a striker generally.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day, weren't we? And as a defender, it must be a nightmare because you can't show him on either foot because he can use either foot. No. You've got to sort of get close to him because if you're leaving him 20 yards out, he can bang him in from 20 yards. It must just be a nightmare. And I just love the facts of, like Maka was saying, there isn't any fear. Ollie was saying it. He was saying that he's coming into this team, he doesn't have any fear, and that he's loving playing his football. And I know we want to avoid Wayne Rooney comparisons, but one thing that I remember when Wayne Rooney was a youngster, he used to talk about how he'd play for Everton and go home and play in the street with his mates. And Ollie was saying this in his press conference. He said, if we have a day off, Mason goes and plays football with his mates. Yeah. He's just that type of player. He just loves playing football all the time. So, there's no point almost in resting him because he's going to play football anyway. And that's what you want to see. You want to see a player who doesn't have any fear, who's enjoying the football and just wants to do the best every time they step onto the pitch. And he's got the ability to do that. He's got the ability to change games, to make an effect on games. And what I've loved about him is these goals that he scored and the way he's come into this team. Earlier on in the season, he was coming on sort of later on in games, in less important games, even when some of the goals he got weren't vital goals. But now the goals he's got have mattered. They've counted. you know, he's got goals when we've needed him. So he's a vital cog in this United machine at the minute.
Yeah, you're talking there about the way that his role has sort of changed in the squad and how he's now scoring those vital goals. Do you think, Adam, that's because he's been trusted to play more minutes, to play more games? Ollie said that you can't drop, like you mentioned, someone who keeps scoring goals. His transition from the youth team, from being played as a bit part player in the smaller matches, to now being, like you said, a vital part of the first choice team. Do you think that Ollie deserves credit for the way he's brought him through in the transition into the first team of Mason Greenwood?
I do, yeah, because I think there would have been a temptation earlier on in the season to just play him. And I think ultimately that can be detrimental to the player at times, maybe as well. We would have been throwing him into a team that wasn't really functioning, wasn't really performing, didn't have many standout performers. So all the pressure would have been on this young kid. And I also remember a period of time earlier in the season where he said, I think he explained why he wasn't picking him. And he said, well, he's had a little bit of a dip in training. He's had to readjust to a few certain things. And that's going to happen with him. There's going to be periods of development behind closed doors. But in the lockdown, he seemed to have bulked up a little bit more. He's got a little bit more physically stronger. And one of the things about him which separates him from a lot of young players is his composure. Like, it's remarkable how composed he is in front of goal. He doesn't rush anything. He's always picking the right time. And like Jay said, you don't know whether it's left foot, right foot. It's just, I'm so glad he's out. If he wasn't our player, like, everyone would be talking about him and you'd be like, I want a player like that. He's the absolute business.
He is so good, isn't he? And I love as well that, like, the obviously the way that football Twitter is, the way that football social media is, no one can just say, oh, he's really good from other clubs. No one can just say, oh, he's really good, hope he doesn't score against us, lol. It has to be, actually, this player's better than him. Actually, Martinelli's better than him. Actually, this guy's better than him. Actually, Hudson-Odoi's better than him.
Have you seen the Arsenal fans? It's
No.
funny you mention them. They've gone through so many youngsters. It was like,
first
it was Martinelli, then it's Saka, and then someone else, because they keep sort of running out of these youngsters.
Exactly.
Because he keeps excelling.
And you're like, but actually,
who were they comparing to Rashford, Ryan Brewster, Iheanacho.
Solanke.
Iheanacho was the worst one. I remember City fans were like, oh, come back, see who scores more goals at the end of the season, Rashford or Iheanacho. And it's just like, what planet are you living on to watch those two players and think that Rashford's not just far superior?
Yeah, but with Greenwood, there must be annoying, like, being another fan from another team actually thinking, actually, he is just better than the rest, isn't he? He is clearly the standout teenager in world football at the moment. I think that is undoubtable.
It's not even that he's better than the other teenagers. He's better than some of the main strikers for all the clubs. He's better than Lacazette.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? He's better than some of the...
Do you think he's better than Haaland?
Oh,
Haaland's difficult.
That's a good... I think so, yeah.
I do.
That's his only competition at that age. Look, Mbappe's 21. He's no longer a teenager. So I know I told him to come outside the other day. But, in terms of Greenwood's age mates, like, Haaland's the one that's up there, really. And I think... What would Mason Greenwood have done to the Austrian league? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and Haaland, the thing with Haaland is, I think he's an excellent player. He's probably... I think his attacking positioning is slightly more developed than Mason's because he's played as a striker his whole career. What smaller career it is, but he's actually played as a number 9. I think he's got Mason's better on the ball than Haaland. I think he offers more in terms of creativity. Haaland is great at being at the back post, being in the middle of the net to tap the ball in. And you watch a lot of the goals that they score. It's like, I say this all the time, but watch Haaland. I watched his highlights again the other day because I watched Sancho's and all this because I like to be excited about players that we might sign. The amount of goals that people in Germany, especially Dortmund, score, where it's like 4 Dortmund attackers just running clean through on goal, where like players are playing like offside traps on the halfway line and stuff. You're like, he's just tapping it in with no defenders around him. So often, it's like the number of attackers outweigh the number of defenders. And it's very rare that you get that in the Premier League.
I think no matter what, I wouldn't swap Greenwood for Haaland.
No, I wouldn't.
That's the thing. I wouldn't swap him.
But I don't think maybe Dortmund would swap him either. Do you know what I mean? I think he's one of those. They're at a level where they're both excellent in front of goal. Haaland's a bit more established because he's played as a starter the whole season. But yeah, I wouldn't swap him for Haaland.
Would you see, like, if we're gonna sign Sancho and we've got Greenwood and we got Marshall and like, could you see us potentially going to like a 2-striker system, like a weird 4-4-2? Like, there's so many different ways we can play with all these players. Like, if we get, it's magical.
Imagine that. We put Pogba, Bruno, Sancho, Greenwood, Martial and Rashford. That's your front six.
That's like one of them old like Nike adverts from the 90s, isn't it? Where you're like, what, just all the best players in the world on one team. No care for like balance, no care for defence. Just smash them. Yeah, exactly. I don't know if that would work from an actual football perspective.
It'd be great for a little while.
It'd be great on FIFA.
Easy, bro. Easy. He'd play there, pluck the ball down on his chest, take it out and ping passes all over the show. Paul Pogba would play there, piece of piss. He'd be the best centre-back in the world as well.
Paul Pogba would be a good centre-back. I reckon Paul Pogba could play on any part of the pitch and he'd still be the stand-up player for United.
Thank God we didn't have this conversation when Mourinho was about. He would have fucking done it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right, let's move on then. And we were talking before a little bit about Rashford, and I think Solskjaer mentioned Rashford as well. And there's been a lot of talk about his changing role in the squad, a bit more of an emphasis, Adam, on his assist play, his build-up play. Do you think that's because he's been a change of instruction? Solskjaer mentioned about how he wants his wingers to stay wide. Or do you think we're almost sort of picking on the best moments of his game despite him not quite being at the best of form at the moment?
I think I was reading something on Twitter. Sorry, I can't credit to whoever tweeted it because I can't remember who tweeted it. But I read something on Twitter where they were saying that they spoke to one of his younger coaches, and he mentioned how Rashford's preferred position was always as a number 10 playmaker that was like pulling the strings. And then when he was around 16, 17, they started working on him, running in behind defenders and working the lines. And I think you can see a little bit of that in him, especially since he got his 20th goal. You could tell that was a little thing where he really had it in his mind, like, I need to get 20 goals this season. And since then, his play's almost relaxed a little bit. And I think in front of goal, he's rushed a few opportunities that he's had, and he maybe should have had one or two more goals. But overall, his performances have been a lot better, a lot sharper. He's picking the times when to sit defenders down, bossing out these little tricks. Sometimes he's just picking the simple pass. And because we've seen Luke Shaw, whose performance has also improved a little in the last couple of games, and he's performing better, he's getting forward better. We're seeing that Marcus Rashford is kind of just sitting somewhere at times, waiting for the run and just hitting a pass. And the weight on some of his passes is fantastic. And I think we are beginning to see a little bit of a different side towards him. And if we get a more complete Marcus Rashford, who's in that left-hand role, we've got, Mason Greenwood, who can play 9 or on the right. You get a Jadon Sancho. I think Martial's performance, I know we're having a little laugh and a joke about it the other day, but Martial's performance was so pleasing because he did all those dirty things that you want your number 9 to do. Fighting with centre-halves, winning the ball back, releasing his teammates. Apart from a goal, it was the perfect performance from him. And you're starting to see these, I said at the start of the season, this is 06-07 for, Ronaldo, Rooney, for Martial and Rashford. And you're kind of starting to see them just become the more complete players. Still a lot of work to do. Still a long way to go for both of them. But, you heard Jamie Carragher this week say, if United want to win the league, we've got to look beyond a number 9 like Martial. And I think that's massively unfair, especially when you consider the champions at this moment in time. Their striker hasn't scored a goal at home in God knows how long. And he's behind Mason Greenwood in the goal scoring charts. I think that overlooks what Martial has done this season in terms of the work on his all-round play, and in terms of leading the line. I think when we went out to pre-season, we saw Rashford and Martial showing intentions to lead the press, demanding more of Daniel James and the people around him, and they've carried that into the season. And Rashford didn't look as good without Martial. Martial didn't look as good without Rashford. They're becoming the most complete players, and they've got a team around them now, which is getting the best out of them as well. So it's good to see, man.
You mentioned there about them being complete players, and Rashford specifically. Do you think that this version of Marcus Rashford that we've seen after lockdown, better on the ball, keeps the ball better, it creates chances for the players? We saw the ball over the top to Bruno at Bournemouth at the start of the game. He should have scored the goal there. We saw the ball to the back post, chopped and put the defender on his arse against Villa, and then chipped it to the back post, and Wan-Bissaka headed it about a centimetre wide, just the width of a bit of crepe paper wide. Do you think that this version of Marcus Rashford, a bit more disciplined, a bit more creative, actually wins us more games in the long run?
I think a little bit. I think what's happened is slightly with Marcus, partly what Maka was saying about maybe the pressure's off a little bit, getting to that 20 milestone. Also, it's almost like what we're saying about Paul Pogba, about not having to do everything. You remember just before the break when Marcus had that back injury, but Ollie still brought him on because we needed to beat Wolves, and it was like we can't win the game without Marcus. You don't feel like that anymore. Bruno scoring goals, Mason scoring goals, even Pogba's getting on the score sheet. There's so many sort of attacking options now. It's not all about Marcus, and Ollie's been sort of waxing lyrical about the fact that Marcus is sort of fulfilling a different role, creating space for others, sort of more interested in assists almost and focusing on his own scoring himself, which is great to see. And I think he is benefiting from that, from having those other options. And also, as Maka was saying there, Luke Shaw getting down that wing. We've seen Luke Shaw getting forward a lot more over the last few games. And you talk about the weight of the passes. I think it was against Sheffield United. Marcus played an absolutely brilliant pass, perfectly weighted into his stride for Luke Shaw to run onto. And that's what you want to see, because Marcus Rashford has got all those tools in his locker. He can, he can do all sorts of different things. He can create. He can go past players. He can score goals. And you want to see him utilising that as well. It's funny because I remember speaking to Shockey years ago, and he was saying that actually he thought Marcus Rashford could play midfield. He thought he wouldn't be surprised if he ended up there playing there one day, which now seems ludicrous. But he said because he can even tackle, he can trap back. He said he wouldn't be surprised if he ended up, and his work rate. So when you've got a team like this, and you've got a team players like Greenwood and Martial and Bruno who can all score goals, then you don't have to rely on Marcus Rashford to focus on that, and he can do some of the other things we've been seeing, and he's doing them really well.
And like I said before about how he started off as a number 10 and then got told to run him behind. When you become as fast as Marcus Rashford, it's inevitable someone's going to be like, have you thought about playing out on the wing? Because you are faster than anyone else in the team. You mentioned as well there about Luke Shaw, who's someone I wanted to come on to, and I'll speak to you about that, Adam, first.
Wanted to do what?
Talk about Luke Shaw. Left back for Man United. You know him.
That's not what you said before.
What?
You said you wanted to do something else too.
Oh right, I don't know. I'll do whatever he wants.
It sounded really aggressive, that man.
He
was like, "You wanted to do what?"
Yeah, exactly.
What?
I want to talk about Luke Shaw for a minute.
Sorry.
We mentioned, and Solskjaer did mention about how Martial can drift to the left, Mason can come in the centre, that there's sort of a fluid front three, but he reiterated in his press conference today that he likes those wings to stay wide, and that is something we've noticed, and you mentioned there before about Luke Shaw, and those underlaps that seem to have just started post-lockdown. Like, Solskjaer's been the manager for 18 months. Why are we just getting him now? But people were saying before, he's improving, he looks better, and you made the point a few times before and during lockdown, Adam, that most of that was actually at centre-back. Do you think now we're actually seeing a sort of a top class, or certainly an improved left back, someone who gets forward, someone who can actually create chances for the players as well as just looking defensively all right in Luke Shaw?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot more of him going forward now. He linked up well with Martial and Rashford a few times against Aston Villa as well. Cutting the ball back, should have had an assist for Bruno, who headed wide. Was it him that crossed to the back post for Wan-Bissaka? I can't remember that one, but he could have had an assist or two that day. He played really well. And I do think that's down to him improving. I think Ali also said in his it might have been after Villa, he said, look, these boys have taken a lot of criticism recently. And he almost hinted like it came from himself. And he said, look, they looked a lot better today. And I think that was about Maguire, Lindelof too. But I also think that was about Luke Shaw. And he looks a lot better going forward. And I think Nemanja Matic has also given him a little bit more freedom too, because he sits so comfortably in between the centre-backs or as a third centre-back when we are attacking and we are in transition. And when you've got someone like that and you're going to be protected, I think you're more comfortable in going forward. And he still does it at times, stops 18 yards out, cuts it back, and I really hate it. But sometimes, give the ball to someone that's in a better position than you, give the ball to someone that's better than you. But making those runs to the byline, even if you're not going to get the pass. That's the thing with Luke Shaw. He's only going to make that run if he knows he's going to get the pass. Sometimes you have to be unselfish, and just make the run anyway. So you're creating more space for others, and he's doing that now as well. So good to see from him. But I think Matic deserves a big shout out for what he's done to the defence.
Yeah, he's definitely helped. And Luke Shaw, he said that we the other week when we talked to Henry Winter on the Tier 1 podcast, he mentioned about Luke Shaw how he's very much an arm around the shoulder. You're the best player. We think you can be the best left back in the world type player. He needs a lot of constant encouragement and guidance. do you think it is just as simple as Ollie going, the wingers are going to stay out wide, get in that channel between the winger and the centre-back, and there's going to be space there? Because he's literally just started doing it like that, hasn't he, Luke Shaw? From, like Adam said there, a lot of times he would pick the ball up on the edge of the 18-yard box and sort of drift across goal. Now he is getting in behind, as you mentioned, against Sheffield United, but in all the games since lockdown, it's like a new thing. Do you think it's just as simple as he's been told to do it and he's doing it?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, you're right. I felt a little bit sorry for Luke Shaw to Jose, because Jose absolutely hammered him, didn't he, in public? And it was like, it got to the point where you thought, hang on a minute, even if he's not playing well, this is a bit much. And he does strike me as one of those players that does need a little bit of comfort. It was just like he couldn't do right for doing wrong at one point under Jose. And he has kicked on, because early on in the season, I wasn't buying into the whole, he's back to his best thing. But I think the last few games, he has been at the sort of levels we saw pre-injury. And I think it's helped as well. The fact you've got the likes of Bruno and Pogba that can play those sort of splitting balls that he can get onto. Marcus Rashford, of course, playing it as well. So it might be a case of a collective. Ollie might have been saying, you need to make these runs. And the midfielders might be saying, we're going to put those balls in there. We need you to get on the end of him. And he started doing it. And I know it's only been a few games in against sort of average opposition, shall we say. But he's doing the right things. It's working. So just don't stop doing it. And he's also in a position where now, for the first time in ages, we've got a really good other attacking left back on the bench. So that might be a little bit of a kick up the arse that he needs as well.
Yeah, and also the whole thing of, you see people in comments and tweets and stuff where they'll say, it's only Aston Villa, it's only Sheffield United. Well, first of all, Sheffield United just beat Wolves the other day. And also, these teams are the teams that we've struggled to break down historically in the last few years. Under Van Gaal, we were pretty good against the top six. Under Mourinho, it was a hit and miss, but under Ole, it's been excellent. It's these sorts of teams, the Aston Villas, the Sheffield Uniteds, those sorts of teams where we have come unstuck. And a lot of that is because of not being able to create chances against a low block, and overlapping runs and people trying to find those runs is a huge way to sort of what's the word? Eviscerate. That's not a word. Get rid of those problems. Anyway, let's move on.
Eviscerate.
To
Eradicate.
Eradicate. That's it. Eradicate those issues. Come on.
Between the three of us, we've got a
we'll
good
clip
vocabulary.
that out. Cut that. Make me look like I'm smart. Adam, give me your expected lineup for the Manchester United against Southampton on Monday.
Unchanged. I think Ollie's going to do it again.
Unchanged.
I think we'll go.
I think
I'll go with.
I'll say that. I'm about to say you're getting your money's worth out of that, Joe. Shut up.
Let me just say, Joe, before we started, let's try not to talk over each other. Ask me for my team, then continues to talk over for me.
I just said, don't you talk over me. I'll do what I like. No, go on, Adam. Sorry about that.
Dickhead. David Ayer in goal, obviously. Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Lindelof, Shaw, Matic, Bruno, Pogba, Rashford, Greenwood, Marshall. I think he'll make the change against Palace.
Do you not think this, though, is in theory an easier game than that Palace game? And that Palace game will be sort of sandwiched in between three different matches?
I think Southampton is much more difficult. I think if we underestimate Hassan Hüttel's side, we'll get beat.
I think they're a good side, and he's proven himself to be a good manager there at Southampton. There were some indications that Ole might make some changes. He did say that players are going to need rest and that sort of thing. But he said that the other day as well, and then played an unchanged side. And he has also mentioned, as you referenced before, that if he's scoring goals, he's not going to get dropped. And that was in reference to Mason Greenwood. But, presumably that idea goes through the whole squad. What's your team, and how many changes have you made?
Got in. But if you look at what he did as well, he pissed off Marshall, but he took him off early. He took off a lot of players early. Do you know what I mean? So... it looks like he's not looking to change the team.
Part of me agrees with Maka, and I do think that all the signs are there. Ollie sort of hinted, it's how you interpret it, he hinted that when everyone's playing well, you don't necessarily change it, but he's left the door open. I just wonder whether he's conscious of the fact that if we were to get an injury, some players haven't had a lot of game time, they haven't had enough game time, so that might be in his thinking of sort of give them some games now or bring one or two in now rather than waiting until I'm forced. So with that in mind, I'm going to make just one change from the team that Adam said. I'm going to go with... I'm going to swap Matic from McTominay. Just because McTominay's not played that much football since we've come back from lockdown. So he might think, OK, now's the time to give him a chance. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if we saw the same team that Maka said and we see like an unchanged team, because yes, the games are coming thick and fast, but this team's coping with it. It's coping well, and if we're winning games and winning them convincingly, which we did for the last hour against Villa, then you don't need to change the winning formula. I just think he may have on the back of his mind, sooner or later, I'm going to have to start giving players a bit more game time. So with that in mind, I'll go for McTominay and for Matic, but I won't bank on it.
Yeah, the injuries is the thing that worries me, and like you said, you don't want to have to bring players in as a result of injuries. It's better to kind of get the substitutions and get the rotation in there to prevent the injuries or to eradicate the injuries, which is a word I use often, and I never forget that word. But I've swapped a couple because I've taken Lindelof out for Bailly just because I think with back injuries, they don't usually heal over. You know, back is a slow sort of recovering part of the body, and I think if he had a back injury a week ago and he's played a game since, I would give him a rest for this one. I know obviously Southampton are a good team, but if you're going to give him a rest, I think see how he does now, bring Eric Bailly back in.
Can I ask you on that front?
Yeah.
Are you, with Danny Ings, who's obviously firing, like banging in a lot of goals this season, one of the top scorers, do you think that that's a good reason to swap it?
I don't think it's...
Does that play into that sort of decision, do you think?
For me, it doesn't play into that decision.
Right.
I think that both Lindelof and Bailly are sort of somewhat equal at dealing with a player like Danny Ings, who's good on the ball, great positioning, good finisher. I don't think he's particularly dominant in the air, certainly not in a way where Bailly's sort of
tiny, innit?
Bailly's aerial presence is much more effective than Lindelof's, and obviously if that is the case, then we can have Maguire in that situation. It is just more from an injury prevention perspective. I've also gone for Fred in the midfield as well. Like I said, Matic. Maybe Paul Pogba should get a rest, but you just don't want to rest him, do you? Well, he's the one who's been out injured for 9 months, hasn't he? So I did consider resting Paul Pogba, but I've gone for the rest of the same back line as you. Wan-Bissaka, Bailly, Maguire, Shaw, and then Fred, Pogba, Bruno. Quite an attacking midfield. And then Mason, undroppable. Martial, as Adam said, came off with minutes to spare. And Rashford, again, we've gone from having too many left wingers when we'd been told that Martial was a left winger and we still had Sanchez and we had all these players out on the left to having only one left winger now, really. So it's got to be him playing for me. And like you mentioned as well, Jay, because we've been winning by 3-goal margins, the last 20 minutes of games have generally been...
Daniel James is still alive, by the way.
Daniel James is still alive, but I don't think he's going to do the same job that Marcus Rashford can do.
No, but he is a left winger, Joe.
Yeah, I know, but I agree with that. He is a left winger, but he's just not on the same level as Marcus, I don't think.
Oh, of course not. I wasn't saying that.
Well, it seemed like you were. But the last few minutes of games have been like almost half pace in the last few weeks. So I think surely they've had a bit of a rest, even those who didn't get subbed off. So yeah, I'm only making 2 changes.
Can I just say, in goal, I will have David De Gea.
Oh yeah, I'll have David De Gea as well.
Not David De Gea, because that would be
Can
crazy.
we get into this? A lot of people noticed on the news, and I've noticed you say it before. I just assumed it was either a choice or just the way you say it. Is it been an accident this whole time?
I don't know. It's just the way I say it. I mean, when we chant David De Gea, I'm not the only one going David De Gea.
Yeah.
But when I say it, I just say David De Gea, and no one's ever picked me up on it apart from loads of people in the comments the other day. So I think I'm gonna have to stop doing it.
I like it either because sometimes Steve has like specific ways he says things because he's trying to make a point.
No, it wasn't.
I didn't know if you were doing that.
The way I said it. So
Just
I'll try harder for the Spanish viewers out there that were deeply offended.
Adam, let's get your score prediction for this one.
2-0 United.
Any goal scorers in mind?
Martial's going to get brace.
Why did you ask him goal scorers? That was the most pointless question in
history.
That angry he was the other day.
Yeah, he was fuming. He wants a goal, doesn't he? What about you? What's your score prediction, Jay?
I'll go 3-0.
Woof!
And I'll go...
Extending that record.
Yeah. Unlike Maka, I'm pretty positive.
Yeah, 2-0.
What negativity?
What is this?
Oh my God.
Why don't you just pick us to lose?
Oh yeah, shit. We could extend that record, couldn't we?
Yeah, I'll go.
We might exterminate that record. Who knows?
Right. or even eradicate that record. That was it. Go on, Jay.
We might even elongate it.
Wow. Elon Musk. Something. I don't know. I don't know if we're saying it anymore.
I'm going to go with the front 3.
Yeah.
All scoring.
Wow. Mason, Marcus, Martial. Have we come up with like a fun, interesting, like, what's it called? Alliteration, anagram, abbreviation of those 3 yet?
Like MAM.
Triple M. MAM. MAM's a bit.
MMA.
Oh, because they're fighters then.
Yeah, it's
they'll
like
get
Marcus, Mason...
I think May still need some work. I'm going to go... I do see another clean sheet, but Danny Ings is good, isn't he? So I'll go 3-1. I see us getting some goals again. But we can't keep scoring 3 goals every game. 2-1. 2-1 Man United. I've changed my mind. I think we'll see a goal from Marcus. And I think
just criticised me for being negative.
Yeah, but it was a joke, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So
well, that old chestnut. I was only joking.
All right, I'm being negative as well then. That's just two of us being negative. Only Jay's the one with any optimism in this team. I'm going to go 2-1 Man United. 2-1. I think Martial will score, and I think Paul Pogba will score as well.
Interesting.
Not bad, is
French
it?
connection.
I know.
French connection.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't that go?
FC UK. So, anyway. Right, that's going to be all from us today. Thank you very much for joining me at home, Adam. Good to see you. Adam's going to be back with the Gazetta tomorrow morning, bringing you all the wrap-up of the newspapers, and we're going to have transfer review as well, so make sure you check that out.
Not all the newspapers, because we don't buy some of them.
A select few of the most reliable and morally sound
We only buy the Daily
newspapers
Star.
will adorn Adam's
Sunday
table
Sport.
tomorrow. He'll have the Express. He'll have a copy of Nuts magazine from 2001 that's got some pretty interesting articles about it. So cheers for joining me, Jay. Cheers for joining us at home. Like I said, we'll be back for transfer review and Gazette tomorrow. Make sure you check those out. See you in a bit.